It's time for the Albion Mag Radio Show. Well, a very good morning and warm welcome. It's Saturday morning here in Brighton. It's drizzly, it's grim, but we're here to brighten your morning. It's the Albion Mag Radio Show with me, Dean Kilford, and...
Hello, Leon here. We're sharing a mic. It's quite cosy. I feel like the Beatles.
Except we're nothing like the Beatles. That's the only... But we feel like that's good. Okay, we'll start with that. Of course, as ever, a big thank you to our friends at Jalapeno Records, providing us with our tunes throughout the show. I say throughout the show, about midway and towards the end of the show, but still, we thank them nonetheless. We've also now, we've got our back catalogue of shows from this season at least up on YouTube. Search the Albion Mag on YouTube and you can listen to past glories of how wrong we were in our predictions in times gone by.
We got last week, right? Scoreline-wise.
Yeah, well, I didn't do it on the show. I wasn't on the show yesterday, last week.
Good point.
But I was on BBC Radio Sussex I've been all week, and in the morning I went for 3-3. I was asked for the score, I went for 3-3 and Murray to score.
Okay, that's not
So
bad
it's not too bad. Yeah. Although, judging by the first half, yeah, which we'll talk about later. We've got loads to talk about today. We've obviously got the review of the Jekyll and Hyde performance against Southampton, the upcoming game against Spurs later this afternoon. Oh, hello, mate. We've also got...
I'm outnumbered.
We've got the Anthony Knockhart's interview with Johnny Cantor coming out speaking about depression. And, of course, we've got our women's football. They've had a mixed week themselves with a win in the Conti Cup and a defeat. So we'll go through that. The under-23s. And it's FA Cup time in the non-league. There's loads of big stories there, which we'll get to later on involving our local teams. Lots of controversy, particularly involving Saltdean United. So you'll want to listen out for that. As usual, you can get in touch with the show at TAM Radio Show on Twitter, Facebook, and our thread on North Stand Chats. That's the monologue over, Leon. Right, we've got to start with Monday, haven't we? We've got to start with how down, because during the game we were commenting on our little WhatsApp group. It was grim, wasn't it? For the majority of the game, it was pretty grim.
You know, I tend to come on here and I try to be really positive and I tend to give the players a bit of an easy time and the manager as well. And obviously, you know, we love them and all that. But that was awful. I mean, that was really, really poor, worryingly poor. To the extent, now I didn't see the Watford game, the first game of the season, that everybody who did see the whole of that tells me was similarly bad, although I do know some people who have seen both, and this was worse.
That first half is possibly, along with West Brom away last year, the worst I've seen Albion in the Premier League. Yeah,
I would agree. I think people do have short memories, and I saw some ridiculous comments saying, like, this is the worst we've played since with Dean and all those sort of things. Like, I don't know how many games you've been to, but no, it was right up there or down there with our worst Premier League performances. And my initial feeling was to criticise Houghton's tactics, and in a way it still is, but he was clearly frustrated and to the point of anger by half-time at the players clearly not doing what he thought they'd all agreed to do. But I do feel that his negativity away from home, or his incredible, over caution, is stifling the players from actually playing their natural game. So obviously you can't legislate for them giving the ball away over 12-yard passes and things like that. But it felt to me like they all felt so absolutely locked into this keeping shape, keeping it tight, that they couldn't express themselves in any way.
Well, that was until till Southampton scored the second goal, and then it really did change, and it was almost as if someone had a key and there was and just sort of unlocked and allowed them to go. The Knockout was given freedom to go wherever he wanted. He suddenly became the player that we remember from the Championship. I think I'm not particularly one to criticise players, but I thought March is someone who showed his naivety and the youthfulness of him. I thought his decision making, which we've questioned a few times on this show, was particularly poor, and I thought him coming off, and I know Lakadia came and he didn't endear himself and maybe have the best games, but he did make a difference in terms of what it did to the shape of the team, which allowed other players the freedom, because we went to 3 up front with 2 wide and in a slightly different sort of free-flowing formation, with Murray sort of being out on the wide but not, so there were still 2 threats forward. I just think that regardless of how he played, but I thought March's tactical naivety was sort of shown there, but it was great to see that last 20 minutes or 23 minutes or whatever it was, because on another day we could have gone on and won that game, which is absurd considering the first 60 odd minutes.
Yeah, but that's 2 in a row where we felt exactly the same way, where we've been appalling. We've had to get to 2-0 down before we started playing, and that's just poor. I mean, that's just poor tactics. Like, if we can play that well and we can almost turn it on at the flick of a switch and say, oh, actually, no, we're going to play in this game, just do it earlier. Don't wait until you're 2-0 down. I understand the psychological imperative of keeping it tight, or particularly away from home, and not conceding silly early goals and all that stuff. There's reasons for that, and I understand Chris Hughton is a almost 60-year-old manager who knows more about the game than I ever will. However, if we can just maybe consider, rather than keeping it tight for 45 minutes to an hour or playing in that very conservative way, how about we just do that for half an hour and then start going at them with 15 minutes to the break, and then maybe we won't go in at 0-1, maybe we'll go in at 1-0 up.
Well, or conversely, let's play the second half and go 1-0 up. Let's do that, and then defend the lead. If that's how that's what the Mourinho teams used to do. They used to get a couple of early goals and then shut up shop.
Then go stodgy.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree, but there is something to be said for this coming out of games, even when you've only got a point, on a wave of optimism. But
because of the nature of the game, it was that bad that to get a point out of it, you would just I
was discussing with Tanya, my partner. We watched all the games together. Would you rather be Brighton doing it this way, or would you rather be Southampton, the team that continually throws points away? Like, they've now got a reputation for being the team that can't hold on to winning positions. Now that would be way more frustrating.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think if you're their home record was something that spoke about. Their home record is awful in terms of, I think it's 1 win in 15 or something ridiculous. Maybe a couple more, but you can see why, because their mentality changed as soon as the header went in. You could see it in the way they played, that all of a sudden they weren't sharp, they weren't closing us down, because I thought they did do well in pressing. We were so laboured. That was the thing about the first half. It doesn't bother me that you're trying to keep possession and maintain possession and keep it tight. What bothers me is the slow nature of the pass and taking 6-7 seconds to make a decision, and then rather than have a pass that's going to go to the player, it's a pass that the players, is it going to get to him, and it's just reaching him in time before the defender's there. We know that teams come and press now. That's the fashionable thing in football, so you can't get away with just casually passing the ball around the back, and it is going to cause problems.
And again, they're so obsessed with keeping shape, keeping the 4-4-2 absolutely rigid, that there's no movement. So no one's prepared to even make a forward run. So a lot of these passes that are going to opposition players' feet, they're anticipating, say, Stevens to Prupper or vice versa. They're anticipating one of them to maybe move forward a bit, so they'll pass the ball forward. It sounds like schoolboy stuff, but it looked like it at points. And I have to say, Southampton, obviously Højbjerg scored an absolute beauty, like just the most perfectly struck low shot you can hit. They weren't very good.
Well, no, that's the thing. But we made them look good for, maybe not for 45 minutes, because the first half an hour you could write off as a nothing, but certainly the last 15 minutes of the first half, we definitely made them look good. Misplaced passes. Another player I'll just touch on, Bissouma, who in other games I've been very impressed with. I don't know whether it was that restriction in tactics, so he's having to think about what he's doing in terms of, should I go forward here? I don't know if that affected him, but he didn't look anywhere near the player that we've seen in previous games.
He was really floundering about in the sort of what was a dead zone between midfield and attack.
Because he was doing neither one nor the other, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was very much one of those performances. And sometimes he'd drop in to try to get the ball, and then he'd end up with it like on the halfway line. And then, where do you go from there, kind of thing? Especially if no one's making is making a forward run, or he'd kind of find himself in the hole, but there's no one around him, and the ball's nowhere there. So it was a very. It ended up looking like a very headless chicken performance. But it does sort of illustrate illustrate how much of this stuff is circumstantial, and the fact that it only needs very minor tweaks to suddenly, look like a much better performance. And as you say, I mean, Locadia had the proverbial mare. Like, that was a truly embarrassing performance from him. I understand he still only played something like 47 Premier League minutes, so I really don't want to lay into him, but it really didn't look good. It was one of those performances where friends and I were saying, this is a 10 to 14 million pound player who we're probably going to have to offload at a loss if things don't improve rapidly.
Which we'll carry on with the Southampton game, but that does tie us in nicely to our poll this week. We were in the discussions after the game and having a conversation about Locadia, and the decision came up and we're not saying Locadia is the worst player by any means, but it got us thinking, who is the worst? Who has been the worst striker that we've bought? Who's the biggest dud that we've signed play up front? And our Twitter poll is out at the moment. We've got 4 choices. Leon, do you want to run the rundown through the 4 that were narrowed down?
I should stress this is very much only in the Amex era. This would be a very different list if we were going back to pre-2011. So these, I actually realised after we'd compiled the list that these are all loanees as well. So there was only one nomination of player among the group who was an actual Albion purchase, and that was Chris O'Grady, and we ruled him out. Pretty much the entire Albion Mag team just said no way. He worked his socks off every game. He scored against Arsenal. He scored another important goal as well. So not even in the running.
Absolutely not.
So we have Chuba Akpom, 10 appearances, 0 goals. Leon Best, 13 appearances, 0 goals. Jonathan Obika only made 5 appearances, didn't score. And Billy Painter, 10 appearances, 0 goals.
Lots and lots of you voting there. What's it, about 140 odd votes at the moment. There is a clear leader, Leon Best, with over half the votes so far. But you've still got time, about 45 minutes left. We'll get the results towards the end of the show today. So there's still time to change that. But currently Leon Best, such promise. And you mentioned earlier, I didn't know this, he's actually without a club at the moment.
Free agent, yeah. So if any agents are listening in,
you acting as agent now? You've become Leon Best's agent on this show.
Yeah, I only take on clients with the same name as me, so it's quite a small. I've got him and Leon Knight. It's not going very well as a business.
Well, we'll see how Leon's business as football super agent continues throughout the season. Final thing about that. Let's switch to the positives of the Southampton game, because for the second game in a row, we've come from 2 goals down to get a point. And is it the fact that no other Premier League club has come from 2 goals down in 3 games in a row? It's something like that. So I don't want to say that's going to happen today, but that does show fight, and it does show that actually there isn't a team that's going to give up. Where last season, I just switched to the West Brom away game because in my head that was the low point of the season. This echoed that, and we lost that game to West Brom without a fight. This season, against Fulham, against Southampton, there's been fight. And so that's a positive.
Very much so, but if we keep doing it, you wonder how many chances...
The positives now, Leon, the positives.
Oh, sorry. Yes, no, you could absolutely see how much it meant to the players to get back to 2-2. But just, it's so frustrating because, again, as soon as the shackles were off and it seems that we were allowed and just a change of mentality and a couple of minor tweaks to the tactics, and we suddenly look like the team that we know we can be again. And it is just so frustrating. I saw people suggesting that we have a separate tactician for away games, like a different manager, which may be stretching things a little far, but it is almost ludicrous how the disparity between home and away form, and there are very deep-rooted psychological reasons for that, why teams are better at home than away, but it doesn't have to be quite such a massive gulf between the two, and that's very much, I think, a self-fulfilling prophecy on our part.
Yeah, I'll go with that. But the one final thing, which is going to tie into what we're going to talk about next, was we mentioned briefly earlier about Knockaerts. Given that free roll, that free shackle, he looked like the player we know Knockaert is, the Championship Player of the Year player, the player that, ultimately was one of the main reasons we were promoted to the Premier League. Last season, we questioned him a few times, and the story that came out was Thursday night, Friday morning. An interview he did with Johnny Cantor at BBC Sussex, openly speaking about the depression he suffered all of last season, which he kept secret from his teammates, kept secret from everyone except for a very few individuals in the club, which I think now, looking back, and I've had time to think, it makes absolute sense with being able to explain away not just the fact that whether he can cut it at this level, but if you're mentally not right for that challenge, it explains some of his performances.
Not to blow our own trumpets, but I believe we did speculate that he might not be fully well as a human being last season. We talked about the fact that he lost his brother not so long ago, and then he lost his father, and he's been through these major life changes and circumstances of grief. And then he mentioned in this interview, which by the way, he was really just asked about his form last season, and he very much elected to say that he could not perform last season because he was unwell. He was ill with depression. As somebody who's had that illness myself, I can say that it is truly debilitating, and you cannot be yourself. You cannot perform in any aspect of your life as you want to. I don't know, there are still some ill-educated people out there who think that depression is entirely linked to sort of societal status or financial wealth or but everyone should know by now that that's not the case. It's an illness that can strike anyone regardless of your circumstances, regardless of how good your life might be. Being better off or whatever, and having a good support network might mean that you have fewer concerns to sort of drag you further down that path, but it doesn't mean that you can't get ill and get depressed. I was really proud of him for talking up. I think we as a football family are getting better about this stuff. I think society is getting better. It was lovely that he felt able. He said specifically that he spoke to Bruno, I believe, who spoke to Chris Hughton, and the club got him help. And the fact that we are, I think many clubs would be now. I don't think we're in the old world of sort yourself out, cheer up, mate, whatever. But it's good to hear that he got the support that he needed, rather than I think there probably are still cultures, certainly maybe other parts of the world, I don't know, but where it wouldn't be taken quite so seriously. And so I'm just so glad that he's already says he feels that he's on the road to recovery, because it can last. If you're a potential sufferer, it can be with you. It will be with you forever in some capacity, and it's about managing it and living with it to an extent. But also, if it is very much circumstantial, based around things like grief and loss, as obviously he suffered, that he may just pull away from it and get back to his best. But he is somebody we've said before about, he's very much he wears all his emotions externally.
Exactly. Well, you don't, but you think but you can see where he's at. The Man United home game last season was, maybe that was the turning point. Maybe that's when his treatment, because it is treatment, whether it's therapy or was when it started to kick in, and you saw that on the pitch. And that's probably, that relief and frustration is probably what came out on the bench afterwards, when he was just overcome with joy and all the different emotions. Maybe that was a release for him, and he's had a few months since then to able to communicate that with and the timing of it to come out, I think, to do it seemingly as spontaneously as he did in that interview is obviously he wanted an opportunity to be able to come to it without calling a press conference to say, I want to talk about this. So I think the whole nature about it has been a very positive one for him, and because he's not the first player that's come out in the last sort of six to 8 months talk about it. And when you think about it, depression is a illness which it affects, I don't know what the percentage is, but it affects quite a lot of the population. So it doesn't surprise me that within a football squad there are going to be several players suffering at any one time, and that's not just because they've not been picked in the first 11. There's a whole myriad of reasons, which is what we're saying. So the fact that now we potentially are going to start to see some of the old Knockaert which is ultimately going to be the new knockout, because he's someone that has gone through through the depression now and starting to come out the other side.
Yeah, no, it's really exciting. He's got 3 assists in 4 now, and he only managed 1 assist in 43 prior to that in the Premier League. So,
it's showing, and you can see. Yeah, I think we've got good times ahead, and certainly good times ahead for him. So, a good feel-good story, which. In a way. In a way. You're listening to the Albion Mag Radio Show with myself, Dean Kilford, and the one and only Leon Cox. We've got our poll up on Twitter. We're asking your thoughts on who's been the biggest flop during the Amex era up front for us. We've got votes coming in. Currently, Leon Best leads the way with just over half the vote, but you've still got time to vote for the other candidates, Chuba Akpom, Jonathan Obika and Billy Painter. We've got about another half an hour left or so on that if you want to get involved at TAM Radio Show, Facebook, Twitter, and our thread on North Stand Chat. I think it's about time that we hit a bit of music from our friends at Jalapeno Records. This one simply titled, If It Ain't Funky, Back It Up. Oh yes, if it ain't funky, back it up. Our friends at Jalapeno Records. You're listening to the Albion Mag Radio Show on 1BTN, available online, DAB Digital and 101.4 FM. Get involved with the show at TAM Radio Show, Facebook, Twitter, our thread on North Stand Chat. Also on Instagram, forgot to mention the Instagram one. Our good friend Tom Stewart is manning the lines, so to speak.
Guru.
He's our web guru or social media guru. He's listening in from work today. He's having to work. So big thank you to Tom. Big shout out to you. Want to move tracks? Obviously, we've talked we're Albion Mag, but we're also, of course, we're based in Sussex, and there's big news. The our guru, speaking of gurus, Dan Tester, our Supremo, has just tweeted in, that song certainly was funky. Yes, the title of the song gave it away, the funky tune. We're a Sussex football family as well, and massive stories in the FA Cup this week. Now, FA Cup second qualifying round starts today. We'll do our big non-league roundup later on in the show, but here we go. Here's a bit of contrasting good, bad news. So Lancing lost to Phoenix Sports in their replay last week, and Phoenix Sports were due to be playing Hendon today. However, Phoenix Sports played an illegible player in that replay against Lancing, so have been expelled from the competition. No confirmation as yet, but it looks like, according to wording from the FA, Lancing are going to be reinstated into the FA Cup and will play a rearranged game with Hendon, I presume this midweek, but we'd have to look out on social media for that. So that's good. So Lancing's still in the competition, which is great for them. Because also the prize money it's worth, I think, about £12,000 at this stage of the competition. So that's huge for a club of Lancing's size. The other story involves Saltdean United. Now, they lost a replay to Whiteleaf in a couple of rounds ago. Whiteleaf went on to beat Corinthian Casuals in the last rounds, but it's just been discovered that Whiteleaf played an illegible player against Saltdean United. So what the FA have done, rather than what I think would be the fair thing to do, is Corinthian Casuals and Saltdean should play a playoff game to get through. They've just reinstated Corinthian Casuals, and Saltdean United have been left without, although they're the team that have been victimised by the illegal player playing against them. So a massive inequality of decisions from the FA. So I'm just going to put a call to arms to all of our listeners, just to petition the FA. It's not the Sussex FA, because they're firmly behind Saltdean United, but petition the FA just to really question this decision as to why they're reinstating Corinthian Casuals rather than having a playoff game between them and Saltdean United, who are the team affected by the decision to play an illegal player. So that's the big FA Cup stories. We'll have the full roundup of who's playing who later on today, including AFC Uckfield in their biggest game of the season. But back to the Albion, because we are the Albion Mag Radio Show. A huge game coming up today. Evening kickoff, which means you've got an afternoon to chill, Leon, which is nice. So I'm sure Grubbs will get a longer than usual visit today.
I might go on the way back. Be FIFA this afternoon, and then the match, and then Grubbs.
Okay, all right. It's good to know your plans. Nice to know your itinerary. So Tottenham come to town. Certainly, if you've in the crisis, if you're to believe the media. Three defeats on the spin, that their worst run under Mauricio Pochettino, who has had a couple of Mourinho moments, and an Eric Cantona moment in midweek in his press conferences, talking about cows waiting for trains, and then his burst questioning journalists for questioning his decision to leave a couple of players at home. Surely this all points in Albion's favour and a comfortable Albion win.
Well, the trouble is that's what people are saying. And, well, a lot of people are. I think it's Jonathan Pearce actually said that someone, and it could be Brighton, are going to feel the Tottenham backlash rather than them continue in this vein for much longer. It's been an ever such a long time since they've lost 4 in a row.
Yeah, it's a very long time. I think you have to 2014, I think you have to go back to.
I thought it was further than that, but...
Oh, in all competitions, I think.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
But, yes, I mean, obviously the punters are looking at, big team in crisis, in inverted commas, that's the narrative. Classic, going away to a difficult away ground and their woes get cemented by the plucky underdogs. But I don't think it's that straightforward. Now, I've seen bits and bobs of these Tottenham performances, but I've also seen Brighton repeatedly giving away 2-goal leads to teams that aren't as good as Spurs. So the concern is that we go into the game, in that similar fashion. And so even if I fancy us to get a point today, but I don't fancy us to continue Tottenham's run of defeats. I just think that would almost be too convenient.
Well, so here's the thing: I've seen a lot of both teams' games, virtually every game of both teams through the course of my various works, and both teams have the Southampton game and the Tottenham-Liverpool game echoed exactly the same first halves, and Tottenham against Inter Milan in midweek, of slow, lackluster passing with no direction. Although Tottenham's is more that they seem to want to, they desperately want to play their way out from the back and don't want to do anything other than that. If Brighton aren't going to be as laboured at home, they're going to come out all guns blazing, because that's what they've done against most teams, but specifically against the so-called bigger teams. If Tottenham start how they have done in the last few games, and even games they've won this season, I fancy them, and particularly in the air, there's a fragility again about this Tottenham defence that I think certainly I would put money on a corner being scored, a header being scored from a corner. I would say if I was a betting man, which I am sometimes, that's where my money would go today, that Brighton definitely will score a goal from a corner today.
Another Shane Duffy, or maybe Dunk, or maybe Davy Pröpper to finally open his Premier League account.
Or Andoni coming off the bench, sir, who knows?
Okay. We, just to echo the voices of doubt that are rattling around my head and probably the internet, 2 victories in 16 League and Cup games for Brighton going into this one. That's not particularly worrying for Tottenham, is it? Our last win against Tottenham was 2-1 in 1983, April 1983. Tottenham are unbeaten in the subsequent 4 meetings, winning 3 and drawing 1. Tottenham have failed to score in just 1 of 15 matches against Brighton. But on the flip side, our only defeat in our last 9 home league games was against Leicester, and that was back in March. And obviously we have beaten Manchester United a couple of times, who it turns out, having seen them in midweek, they're not as bad as we all thought. Well,
and of course, I think, we've started against the top 6. We lost the first 3 and then unbeaten in the subsequent 4. I think that's right, isn't it? Yeah. Including against Spurs, that 1-1 draw towards the end of the season, which was a game probably Brighton could have got something out of. A dubious penalty which sort of changed the game, but a dodgy call from the linesman could have been through. I can't remember who was through on goal now towards the end of that game, but
we can't keep relying on penalties, though. I mean, this is
penalties. We're winning them. That's the thing.
More than anyone else, I think, except maybe Crystal Palace.
Except for Zaha. Oh yeah, we should mention about that. We should mention about his comments in the press. Actually,
well, go on. Let's do it. I've heard mixed takes on this. So some people say, fair enough, he was unscripted and honest, and he's actually expressing genuine concerns and frustrations as a footballer. And other people are saying, get a grip, you're good, you're going to get kicked, it's part of the game, man up, and all that rubbish. So, what do you reckon?
I think he's perfectly right to speak out. He does get a lot of abuse on the pitch and in the stands. He's a classic pantomime villain because he's a good player, so opposition fans are always going to target him. And I know he plays for that lot up the M23, but he is a good player. And the challenge on him last week was shocking. And I don't blame him for being angry about it and speaking out, because if that was me, I would be teething. I mean, I know he went in not long after and he got booked himself for retaliating, which he pulled out of that. But if he'd have gone in with the same velocity, that he'd probably have been sent off.
Yeah, and I think any honest Brighton fan would say if Knockaert, I mean, obviously Knockaert, we know he's prone to occasionally go down easily and get a free kick, perhaps not as often as Zaha, but we also know that as Partizan Albion fans, if he was getting kicked up in the air like he did away at Watford last season every week, we'd be absolutely up in arms, and we'd expect him to speak out and say, wait, can I get some protection from the officials? So
yeah, so that's our little take on Zaha. But back to the Spurs game tonight. I can't see anything other than a Brighton win. I cannot see anything other than I've looked at the two teams I know more about probably than any other. I would say I think Tottenham will score because they tend to score. I think though Albion will be 2-0 up and it will just be a consolation. That's how I see it.
I'm going 1-1 again. I don't exactly know why, but I just feel like. Tottenham clearly aren't in the best shape, but equally they're still player for player. I think they're still, they've got a lot to be worried about. Even with Kane clearly not at his peak form at the moment, and some of the other players too, they've still got a lot of capability there. Mura, I mean, there's talks that tactically he's actually causing Pochettino problems in that while he's very good, he's actually disrupted the setup of the side, and in fact Kane is having way fewer chances since he's come in the team, even though he looks every time I've seen him, he's looked fantastic. Mura as a player, he gets the ball deep and surges through with it, but it's kind of shattered their actual modus operandi that they were putting into effect so well. As somebody who sees Spurs more often, is there anything in that?
Possibly. What I've seen from Kane, particularly this season, ever since the Colombia game in the World Cup, is a player that I don't want to say tired, but I think he's still suffering from that injury he got towards the end of last season. And he came back, there was an international break, he had 2 weeks off, and he came back and played the very next game. I don't think that injury is right. I don't think it's healed properly because his movement isn't the same. And so subsequently, what used to happen before is he'd receive the ball in midfield, he'd turn, drive, shoot from some ridiculous way out, but he'd score. Do you know what I mean? He would take more shots than, I think it was just, he averaged 7 shots a game or something ridiculous like that. That's gone down to under 4 a game now, which in itself tells you its own thing. Yes, Moura being given more freedom to go, or maybe not being given more freedom, but taking license to go and take players on, but he was the only player that I've seen in a couple of games that looks like he wants to win a game. So as someone watching the game, you're more excited by watching that than you are by a striker that's seemingly out of form, that seems to take more touches and not taking the risk of a shot that he would have done certainly towards the start of last season and times gone by. So I think that's maybe disruptive, but I think there's more to it than that.
My concern with Moura is that with our very rigid 4-4-2, even at home, that we don't have an actual deep-lying sitting midfielder screening the back four. Who is it who actually takes responsibility for cutting those sorts of runs from deep out? Is it Proper, is it Stevens, or is it Dunk, or Duffy comes to meet?
Montoya will be tasked with that, I think, and he will... I watched him close against Southampton against Long. He's very clever, he's very well travelled and rewarded player, he'll get a few kicks on him.
Sure.
Because I think he'll be the player that will be tasked with that.
I'm sure you're right. He was another player though that came out after the first hour of Monday, just thinking, how is this bloke? This is the bloke we signed from Barcelona who's won the Champions League. He was one of many sort of standouts of. These players don't seem to be just operating at the level you would expect them to, even at a baseline level. They were like below the baseline.
Moving on. As I said, I think looking at the two teams where they're at, Brighton's home form, that's where I see the game. Obviously, we've got our celebrity pundits always doing their predictions, and they're more in line with you than me with the 1-1 draws. We've got our ever knowing man of football, Paul Merson, predicting a draw, and Mark Lawrenson also 1-1 draw. But Jessica Ennis-Hill has gone for a Spurs away win.
I'm not sure does she support Tottenham?
No, I thought she supported Arsenal.
Yeah, I thought she was an Arsenal fan, so maybe she's trying to jinx them.
Yeah, that could be it. So, if you've got any thoughts on how you think the game's going to go, do get in touch at TAM Radio Show via Facebook, Twitter, and our thread on North Stand Chats. Speaking of Twitter, we've got our Twitter poll. We've been asking throughout the show, or throughout the last few days, your opinion on the worst Albion striker in the Amex era. Currently, Leon Best leads the way with just over half of the votes. There's about 10-15 minutes left of this. Does that sound about right, Leon?
Yes,
yeah, Leon's just frantically searching through Twitter to find it, to see where we're at. He's on there. Any changes there, Leon?
Oh, no, we're done.
We're done. No, we're actually on. So we've got an official result. Leon, over to you.
Yes, beautifully timed. So Jonathan Obika, maybe just people have forgotten him because he only played the 5 games. He was from Tottenham, wasn't he?
He was, yeah.
And I believe when he arrived, some of my Spurs sporting mates said, "Oh no, you want to watch out for him. He's actually going to be all right." But he's playing
faded away completely.
He's gone somewhere.
I think he's playing non-league.
Oh, really? I thought he was abroad. Anyway, 11% of the vote. Then the big fella, Billy Painter, 13% a few years ago now.
He's now a painter.
Yes.
Maybe, I don't know. Do you want to be his agent as well?
But I mean, we had him the same era. We had Sam Vokes, and he's done all right.
He's done all right.
Yeah. Chuba Akpom from Arsenal, no longer at Arsenal, I don't think. He's probably the one who's gone abroad. 25%. And then Leon Best made 5 appearances for Charlton last season, possibly some other clubs as well. Currently looking for a home, 32 years old, 6'1". I've got his stats to hand if you want to give me a bell. Leon Best, 51%, flying in the face of nominative determinism there, with more than half the vote. 13 games, no goals. I mean, I'm 46, incredibly slow, but I think I would have got one in 13 with the supply line that he had.
Well, Leon Best, I remember Leon Best from whatever Championship manager it was, 2000 or something. He was the young player that you wanted to sign because he was they always had the young English player that was amazing. You signed him, he was turned into 99s all round, and he was that player. Never really panned out for him because he was supposed to be England's future at one stage.
High potential, but I mean, it just goes to show maybe he genuinely did have all that potential, and he actually carved out a career and played for a lot of different league clubs, including, we had him on loan from Newcastle, didn't we? So not exactly minnows. But I think there's so many things that go into whether you really make it or not. But actually, he's played hundreds of league games. He's probably earned good amounts of money. He's laughing at the age of 32, I expect. But having said that, maybe he's got a few regrets as well that things didn't quite pan out for them as he wanted. But
as his agent, you should probably know. Oh,
yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. Well, I have said to him, don't look so flipping lazy. Fans love a player who runs about. If nothing else, run about. Go after the ball, even if you know you're not going to get there. Leon, that's what I say to him.
Perfect. So there we are. That's our Twitter poll of the day. We will put another one up probably around, it's about Wednesday. They normally go out midweek, ready for next week's show. We'll have our creative brainstorm to come up with an exciting one to tantalise you.
Might be based on what happens today.
It could have a bearing based on today. We should have a little chat about our under-23s. because whisper it, ever so quietly, they're pretty good. Unbeaten this season, except for that Sussex Community Shield loss to Haywards Heath Town, which I happen to be commentating on, but even then they looked all right. But yeah, they got a 2-2 draw on Thursday night in the Premier League International Cup. This one's called. James Tilley, another good player who's also from the under-18s as well, I believe. And was it Ben Barkley got the first goal? So Everton were high up in the Premier League under-23 table as well. So they're a good team, and that was a good result, battling result.
The School of Science Academy at Everton, yeah, I think they must be, although they do spend some cash, they must be like us, looking to continue to develop.
Absolutely, cultivate young.
Yeah. So yeah, it's great. But Connolly didn't score, so get rid of him. It's clearly rubbish.
Yes, Connolly, very, very unusually for him, didn't get on the score sheet. The young Irish lad that we will continue, much like you with Dunk for England, I'm very much about Connolly for the first team, because it will happen. Trust me on that one. He is someone to look out for. So Albion, as I mentioned, the only unbeaten side in the league, sitting third, 2 points behind Arsenal, but do have a game in hand. And they're away to Leicester City on Monday night in the Under-23s league. So, and then they've got a bit of a gap, I think, because they've got Benfica in the International Cup, because I think we mentioned this show before, it's an invitational competition, and so to be representing one of 8 English clubs in that competition is an honour in itself. And some big games with Bayern Munich, the other team in our group, so it's some good opposition, good to test our future.
Do we get to play Bayern Munich at the Amex? Do you know?
I don't know where that fixture is going to be played.
Because that would be awesome,
yeah.
Because we may not, with all the best will in the world, we may not get to see the senior men play Bayern Munich anytime soon. So I'd go and watch the under-23s play Bayerns. Well,
if they're going to schedule the West Ham game at the Amex, you'd think maybe they'll do that. Or maybe we'll see a couple first teamers making their way down for that one. You never know. So yeah, the under-23s do get down. They're a very good footballing team. And very inventive. It's almost like, if you see their set pieces, they do a whole range of. It's almost trickster-like in their design, and it's good to see them try it. And they do try different things every single time. And I do wonder if it is a sort of platform to them potentially pop one in the first team.
And right now, it's hard for us to envisage the future without Chris Hughton, but could we be one of the clubs that actually promotes from within?
Simon Rusk is
Rusk or Rossignol as as 1 and 2 in whichever order. Currently, it's Rossignol is the junior, but whether he'd remain as the junior partner if he completes all his badges and maybe goes out and manages a team or something.
Well, I often think that the manager is only as good as his coaching team. So whoever really is manager, like you look at the Man United with Steve McLaren going back when they started winning the Premier League, McLaren was the success behind. Then when he ran his time, it was Mulstein and it was Queiroz, and so it's the coaching. So whichever way around it is, Simon Rusk is the man doing the stuff on the field. So whoever the name is, if that would be great, wouldn't it? Promote from within, yeah. I'll go with that.
We were also speculating, Tanya and I, that wouldn't it be awesome if we were the first team to promote from within by promoting Hope Powell to when with Hughton, because she's about 10 years younger than Chris Hughton. So if Hughton does another 3 or 4 years and then retires, we could be the first team to have a female manager, as predicted by a TV drama The Manageress 25 years ago.
Well, I don't. There's a possibility.
If anyone was going to do it,
yeah, she's the name, and I think she'd need to. In honesty, she'd need to stabilise the women's team first and prove at that level first.
I'm talking hypothetically in a few years, but I think if anyone was going to do it, Tony Bloom, I think, is that much of a maverick, forward-thinking, open-minded type that he might even actually entertain the idea.
Well, we've heard it here first. Hope Powell going to be the next first team manager, potentially, in 5, 6 years, 10 years' time. Who knows? I like that. Well, it links in nicely because we're going to move on to Hope Powell's team. They won their first game of the season against London Bees on Sunday in the Continental Cup. They currently sit 4th in Group C. Very, very slim chance of them progressing through to the next round. I think they need a sort of a miracle of results to go their way to qualify. But positive for them to go through against a team they've played a fair few times over the last couple of years. Umatong, Eileen Whelan, and a first goal for Ellie Brazil, who's recently joined, sealed that win. Then they returned to the WSL on Tuesday night, or was it Wednesday night? I can't remember now off the top of my head, against Birmingham City women. And once again, suffered a 1-0 defeat. Penalty just on the stroke of half-time. A bit of a clumsy challenge from Rafferty, a good friend of the show. It's a decision that she spoke about afterwards, saying that she just, it lost, just one of those things. A challenge she would never make 9 times out of 10. It was a penalty, and hard work was undone. Couldn't get back into the game. It's the second successive 1-0 defeat in the league, which it's not the greatest start, because there's a lot of promise, a lot of potential in this team, and I just think it might take a bit of time for them to work themselves, because there's a lot of new players again. 8 new signings over the course of the summer break. But they don't have time to rest, really, because they've got and because of the way the systems and the fixtures are now, they're used to play this sporadic one game, maybe like 2 games a week in a row, then 3 weeks off, and now there's 3 games in a week for them for the first time in a long time, I think. And they've got Liverpool on Sunday morning at the Broadfield Stadium, Crawley Town's grounds, and it's the first time ever that the Albion women are going to be shown live on TV on BT Sports, and I believe, Leon, you're going to be in attendance.
Yeah, we thought we'd actually go, even though it's on the TV and we've got that channel. We thought it'd be nice to go along and watch it live. Get 2 games in this weekend. I have a good feeling about it, based on very little, really, other than I feel like we might win 1-0.
I like your optimism. We've got a good team. We've got good players. I think it's just that thing of teething and working the new players into the system that you can certainly see them trying to play. There is quite a lot of similarities between the first and women's team in terms of how they play. So maybe you won't be too far off with your Hope Powell for first team manager in the future.
She doesn't get the sack in the meantime.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. So that's it. If you are around tomorrow, get yourself for a nice little lunchtime game. That's the Broadfield Stadium, and maybe stop and have a Sunday roast on the way back. That sounds like a good Sunday.
Smith and Weston's, the novelty cowboy-themed establishment at Tilgate Park. It's a remarkable place. Have you ever seen the Michael Crichton film Westworld, about the theme park that goes horribly wrong and all the robot cowboys start to kill the... It's like that.
You haven't sold it to me, Leon, if I'm honest, but... yeah, why not? Are you trying to get free food from somewhere else? So there we are. That's
the birthday belly buster is a thing. Is a remarkable thing.
Well, it's that time of the show where we get this. Oh yes, it's the return of a non-league roundup. We mentioned it's FA Cup day earlier on, and as Leon knows and regular listeners to the show know, it is my favourite competition in the world, and it's the second qualifying round day today, except for Hendon, of course. We mentioned they will hopefully be playing Lancing, who should be reinstated to the competition. Once again, if you did catch us earlier, Saltdean United will feel hard done by lobby the FA to get them back reinstated in the competition, or at least to have a playoff against Corinthian Casuals, as they were hard done by the fact that Whiteleaf played an eligible player in their replay a couple of rounds ago. But games that are happening today, AFC Uckfield, the lowest ranked side in Sussex in the competition still, will be playing Dartford today in the biggest game in their history. And the money they've made in this competition, we said about the money, £12,000 has been raised so far, or just under that. That has absolutely transformed that club, and it's great. And I wish them luck against the National League South side. It could be a tough afternoon, but they've caused some surprises and shocks. So let's hope they can do it again. Other games, we've got lots of away games today. Whitehawk, Worthing, Lewes, Burgess Hill Town, Eastbourne, Borough, all away. But the games, if you are free and want to catch a game before heading to the Amex later, we've got Bognor Regis Town at home to AFC Sudbury in the FA Cup. And in league action, Eastbourne Town are playing Lancing, and Saltdean, who we talked about earlier, are host to Chichester City. Saltdean are still unbeaten in all competitions, and actually are unbeaten in all competitions because that game against Whiteleaf has been expelled, so that was currently their only defeat. So there we are. There is of course a new way to watch non-league football this year. Highlights of all the games that are filmed throughout Sussex every Monday night from 8 p.m. on YouTube, the Sussex Football Show. Of course you can do that, and whilst you're at it you can download the back catalogue of our shows, because you can also catch the Albion Mag on YouTube. We're hoping to sort out the podcast situation, but it's a good little thing in the interim. That's the non-league roundup. Anything to say on the non-league, the FA Cup, Leon?
Obviously, I'm very excited about the early stages of the FA Cup.
It's written all over your face, Leon.
I am. But bring on the third round.
Yeah. Okay, well, you know, there were days gone by when we'd be looking forward to the first round, Leon. So,
very fair point.
So there we are. If you're out and about and you're not going to the Amex, or you fancy a very quick turnaround of games, get yourself down to support one of your local teams. That is the non-league roundup.